Hi everyone, it is Wednesday, September the 14th, 2016, and I'm going to read a letter here from Schaeffer Cox, dated 8/24/16. It says, "Hi, I'm in the hole. It's every bit as bad as it sounds. I'm sitting on concrete, naked, and alone in the dark, writing this to you after 15 days of trying to get your address. I'll get to that in a minute, but first I need to answer the question you got from Amy. She asks to me, it sounds like Schaeffer said to keep getting ready for 2 for 1, and until then, to do peaceful protests. Did I hear that right? Am I missing something? Can you help me out?" Okay, Amy is missing a lot, pretty much everything that led up to that. It is all in pages 6 through 21 of my Rule 60 motion if you want to see evidence with your own eyes, but here's a quick sum up. First of all, the Fed sent in Bennett as an informant provocateur to try to sell me on the idea of violent aggression. I told him that was totally stupid because we were accomplishing great things with our grassroots education and cultural liberty efforts, so we need to keep doing what's working. That was in 2009. Then, in 2010, the Fed sent in Fulton, Bennett together, while at the same time filing a totally bogus child neglect complaint with no probable cause required when kids are involved, so they could come take my 1.5-year-old son away. Don't forget, this happened 2 weeks after I held a huge town hall meeting where I announced that we knew about the cops' drug trafficking and about Office and Child Services pimping out toddlers to perv bureaucrats as payment to run cover for the dirty drug cops. So I just boldly exposed OCS and the Drug Task Force for some serious crimes they were working together to commit. Then guess who comes after me? OCS and DTF, of course. My son was in a perfectly healthy, God-fearing home, and I'd never had anything to do with drugs ever. So I knew without a doubt that this was a politically driven attack on my family by known criminals embedded within the government. I knew this, and the feds knew I knew it. Think about that for a minute. So, with me knowing full well that OCS and DTF are attacking my kids in corrupt retaliation for my whistleblowing, the feds send in Fulton and Bennett, who say, "Ha! Quote, now you see we were right. Now do you think violence is totally stupid?" Unquote. I bet you don't think that anymore now that we've got your kids. Life is in danger, do ya? Sorry, let me go over this quote again. Ha! Now you see we were right. Now do you think violence is totally stupid? I bet you don't think that anymore now that your kid's life is in danger, do ya? We know who these corrupt bastards are, and we're ready to go kill them right now for you. Just say the word, and we'll go take them out. This is about protecting your children. What kind of a father are you if you say no?" Unquote. At this point, I was thinking, I'm a smart father who's not going to go off on a suicide rampage with two drunks like Fulton and Bennett, only to leave my children fatherless forever. That's what kind of a dad I am. I'm not a reactionary moron who can't foresee the consequences of foolish actions. When I told Fulton this, and my friend Les Zerby backed me up and agreed with me, Fulton flew into a rage, grabbed Les, and held an 8-inch hunting knife to his throat while demanding that I get on board with the violence. This was at Blondie's Army Surplus Store. Les and I managed to get out of there alive, and I never saw Fulton or Bennett ever again. I was scared of them both after that, and I told everyone to stay away from them and don't do anything to set them off. Because I was staying far away from Fulton and Bennett, the feds ran in another informant, a new guy named J.R. Olson. He came on the scene in early 2011. He went to a meeting on February 4th and 5th in Anchorage where he talked to Fulton and Bennett. They were right back at their old tricks, pushing for foolish violence. Fulton told Olson the story about last summer when we didn't know if the government was going to take Schaeffer's kid or not, and how he almost killed Les when he and Schaeffer tried to stop our plans. Fulton then instructed Olson to return to Fairbanks and deliver a death threat ultimatum to me. Olson did just that when he tracked me down at a Super Bowl party on February 6th, where I was holding my one-day-old baby girl on my chest. Olson took me aside and told me in no uncertain terms that Fulton was coming to town to start a violent uprising, and that if I said or did anything to shut it down like I had the last time, Fulton was going to kill me to get me out of the way, then proceed with the violent uprising. Immediately I told my wife we had to get as far away as possible. She agreed, and we began making ourselves ready. It was during this time that the conversation took place which Amy is asking about, February 12th to be exact. I had no idea that any of these violent thugs worked for the cops. I thought Olson was just an idiot who Fulton and Bennett had been able to impress. He was in contact with Fulton and Bennett despite my ongoing admonishment to stay away from them completely. And now he was putting me on the spot for a reply to the death threat ultimatum he'd brought back. This is why I met with him with two other people on 2/12/11, Ken and Coleman. I wanted to have two more people on my side, and I knew Ken and Coleman would agree that violence was totally foolish. The feds weren't trying to catch a criminal, they were trying to set up an innocent man who'd found out that they were the drug trafficking, child molesting criminals. That's why they had to create this no-win situation that they did. If I said no violence, no way, ever, never, like I had before, Fulton would kill me. If I said yes, let's go do a mass shooting, the feds would kill me. If I went to the cops, I wouldn't get any help because they were so corrupt. The MPs had already taken me aside and warned me about how the cop bragged about how they were setting up to murder me, and that would fix the Schaeffer Cox problem. The only option I had was to leave the country for my safety, but I didn't want word of that to get to Fulton or Bennett. I had Olson hounding me several times a day for my answer to Fulton's death threat ultimatum. I couldn't tell him what I really thought or I'd get killed. But I wasn't about to say, yeah, it's a good idea. So I focused on the practical fact that even if we wanted to overthrow the government, we're not strong enough to do it. We can't even retaliate 2-for-1. We're not able to. I basically said, I'm doing a Gandhi because I'm not capable of doing anything else. Come talk to me again when you're strong enough to fight the feds and win, which I knew would be never. All I was trying to do was buy enough time for me to get out of the country without being murdered by Fulton or the dirty drug cops. I didn't know I was being recorded. Put yourself in my shoes. What might come out of your mouth if you were scared for your life from Fulton Bennett and corrupt cops? Worse yet, ask yourself how much control of your feelings and your speech you might have if those drug trafficking child molesters were threatening your baby. How do you think you would react to military police sitting you and your spouse down and saying, "We felt like we needed to tell you that the cops in town are bragging about how they are going to murder you to fix the Schaeffer Cox problem"? I feel like I did pretty good, all things considered. Yeah, I was scared. Yeah, I was mad. Yeah, I hate the corruption I see. Anybody with an ounce of morality or love for their country should hate what went on here. But despite all my feelings, I managed to rationally choose the morally right course of action that would do the greatest good for the greatest number of people, i.e., me, leave my home, my business, my fortune, my friends, and my future, and just walk away forever in the hopes that by me leaving the Fulton Bennett situation would be diffused. I explained this in lucid detail on February 19th, and it's on recording. Rudy should have it by now. If he does not, Maria needs to just do as I've asked her to and give it to him right now. So you can hear my voice on 2/19/11 explaining how I don't have hatred for anyone personally, and I'm leaving because that's what has the brightest future for my family and everyone else's. Violence would be a fruitless gesture. Now, let me be quick to point out that I am not a pacifist. I believe that the use of force to defend yourself or your country is morally allowable. I believe that the feds and the globalists are so out of control and utter lawless these days and such a serious threat to our national safety and well-being that we the people would be well within our moral rights to use any force we had to make the government submit to the Constitution and respect everyone's rights. I believe that, and you'll hear me articulate that idea. However, exclamation marks, capitals. Just because it is perhaps morally allowable, that does not, in caps, mean it is tactically feasible. I know that any attempt to meet the Fed's violence with violence of our own would be a certain failure. It would play right into their hands by reinforcing their propaganda narrative. And it would orphan our children and widow our wives for nothing. Worse than nothing, it would help our enemy. So, while the use of force may itself be moral, to resort to force knowing that doing so is guaranteed to hurt your family, your country, and your cause would be immoral. Got that? Knowing that doing so is guaranteed to hurt your family, your country, and your cause would be immoral. In February of 2011, it was my patriotic and moral duty not to have the courage to use force, but I have the self-control not to use force. I passed that test and I earned my stripes. Later it became my patriotic and moral duty to suffer torture rather than make it end by agreeing to join the feds and betray my country by helping them set up innocent Americans. I still am earning my stripes on that one, and it's going to leave a deep scar. I'm paying with my own blood and tears to keep my honor. But when your honor is all you have left, it becomes quite precious to you. Now, let me take a moment to speak to the well-meaning critics out there. Very often someone will say to me, "I agree with what you stand for, you just went about it wrong." Quote, "This position is indefensible for two main reasons, aside from the fact that they generally give no specifics. Number one, given the information I had at the time, and in light of what I reasonably believe to be true regarding my circumstances, the things I said and did pass the moral test. They can be characterized as taking the best available options. So, my applying of my moral principles to what I had to work with can only be criticized within the context of the circumstances as they existed at that time. And within that context, my words and actions are above criticism. Number two, regardless of the moral rectitude of my words and actions, nothing I said or did is illegal. Even if you take the government's own theory of the case and hold it up to the legal standard without poking any holes in it at all, it still doesn't amount to crime. It's perfectly legal for me to believe, as I do, that there's not a badge big enough in this country to make me stand by and watch someone rape, murder, or kidnap my child. I'm under no legal obligation to stand still to get shot when the drug cops come to fix the Schaeffer Cox problem by murdering me, as they bragged to the military police was their plan. Think about this. The drug cops in Alaska are so corrupt that the MPs had to come tell me that an armed home invasion with intent to murder me was in the works. And the rest of the police force is so corrupt that the only option the MPs had was to tell me directly. Other than that, they had no mechanism to intervene or stop corrupt drug cops from committing a murder. If the military police weren't strong enough to stop the corruption, then I damn sure wasn't. It's sad, but our country is starting to function a lot like Mexico. No rules, only rulers. The government is in the hands of savage criminals who have no respect for law and no reverence for humanity. If I had the power to make the system obey the law and stop trespassing people's rights, I would. But I don't have that power and I can't. So I don't. And that, my friends, is what the prosecutor pointed as my crime. Someday, if he's strong enough, was the accusation hurled at me by the prosecutor. The only reason he's not overthrowing us is because he's not capable of pulling it off. That's what the prosecutor said. Leave it to a U.S. attorney to prosecute a guy for being incapable of committing a crime for which he is being prosecuted. Even by their own nonsense statutes, what the prosecution has accused me of is not a crime. It's perfectly legal for me to believe what I believed and say what I said. According to their own rules, the prosecution's legal arguments make no sense at all. But let me tell you what makes perfect sense. The prosecution in their sentencing pleaded to the judge, wrote this, quote, "Schaeffer Cox does not believe in man's laws. He believes in God's laws. People cannot be rehabilitated from this kind of thinking. Therefore, we ask for the greatest severity sentence, not less than 35 years and possibly as severe as life if this honorable court sees fit," unquote. I'm going to read that again, just so you catch that. Quote, "Schaeffer Cox does not believe in man's laws. He believes in God's law. People cannot be rehabilitated from this kind of thinking. Therefore, we ask for the greatest severity sentence, not less than 35 years and possibly as severe as life, if this honorable court sees fit." End quote. Now let that sink in. All of the paper circus leading up to those 3 sentences can be discarded, for these encapsulate the whole of my prosecution. The government is a religion. Men have set themselves up as gods, and I would not worship. Case closed. In the words of my namesake, Dr. Francis Schaeffer, no totalitarian government can tolerate a people who have a standard by which to judge the government and its conduct. So here I sit, proof of the truth of those words, naked on the concrete floor, writing this letter in a cell the size of a bathroom stall, 32 years old, spending the prime of my life in the dim silence of solitary confinement because, like Daniel in the Bible, I would not worship. If you believe my cause is just, but not at the same time feel an unexplainable urge to find fault in me, let me attempt to explain what I think might be happening inside you. The moment that you accept my criticisms of the government and recognize them as basically true, your subconscious performs a lightning-quick rational calculation much faster than your conscious mind could put it into words. Your subconscious says to you, "This man is right in what he says, so either he did something wrong to end up in prison, or you did something wrong to stay out of prison." Inaction, after all, is an action. So at the same moment that sympathy for my plight swells in your throat, you feel fear and panic fluttering in your heart. And without realizing why, you begin to search for fault in me. Because if I am to blame for doing something, then you are not to blame for doing nothing. But you cannot fool your subconscious, and if you try, you will only offend it. Sure, you can shout it down and fill your mind with retrospective criticisms of me, but your subconscious won't buy it. It knows what it knows, and now that it's offended, it will quit helping you and start talking smack instead. This will pervert you from being wholehearted. The poison will spread until you reconcile with yourself. If what I just said describes you, then here's my advice. Quit being so hard on yourself. Our country is completely out of control. And it's no big deal if you are somewhat to blame for that because of your apathy. You can recover from this if you'll admit it to yourself. But if you search for excuses and offend your conscience that knows better, you will never recover from the lack of wholeheartedness. And trust me, if even just a small percentage of people in this country start living wholeheartedly, the cultural and political problems will clear up naturally. I kind of went off on a broader topic there, so here's the super short answer to Amy's question. I already told Fulton no, N-O, on the violence. He said, if I told him no again, he'd kill me. So I was just trying to buy some time without saying yes. That meeting with Olson was on Saturday, February 12th. While I was talking to him on that recording, my wife was back at the house packing our things to leave the country for good. By the next day, Sunday the 13th, we were on the road, headed for Canada. These facts are provable by recordings and hundreds of other ways. Schaeffer Cox. P.S. Please send me lots of letters and pictures while I'm in the hole. It's hard, and hearing from people in the real world is like a gasp of fresh air. My address for now is Schaeffer Cox, and we'll put it below. The end.